if you want to refer to anything in the officer's report, can you please first clearly state the relevant page number and the paragraph number? This is very important so that we can all follow whatever it is that you are referring to. Is that clear, everybody? Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, we're fine to start, Chairman.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Rochford District Council's remote audit committee meeting, and welcome to anybody watching on the live stream. Item Agenda 1, apologies for absence. We've received apology from Councillor Newport and Councillor Phil Shaw. Agenda Item 2. We have Councillor Julie Gooding as substitute for Councillor Phil Shaw. Are there any others? No. Agenda Item 3, non-members attending. We have no non-members attending. No?
Oh, yes, you have.
We do. We have Councillor Smith and Councillor Mrs. Mason.
Sorry. Okay, so we've got Councillor Smith and Councillor Mason.
Councillor Mrs. Mason. Yeah.
Councillor Mrs. Mason. Agenda Item 4. Minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of March 2020. Have we read them and are they agreed, members?
Agreed.
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 Chairman, since I wasn't there, I can't give my vote for the minutes.
No, that's fine. I can't either. I wasn't there, but so they're all agreed. Yes. Anybody not agreeing? All right, agreed that. Item number 5, to receive declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest?
Chairman, I have put my hand up for this one.
Yes, Councillor High.
It's just in relation to, it's mentioned in a couple of parts of reports about the grant of £10,000 paid by the council to various businesses. One, I am a shareholder in a company which received the grant, and also I act for clients who also received that grant. It's pecuniary in the sense that I received it, but it shouldn't affect my voting or my participating in any other parts of that part of the agenda.
Chairman, can I also declare a non-pecuniary interest? The Raleigh Conservative Club received money, £10,000, of which I am chairman.
Thank you. Are there any others? Thank you, everybody. Now, before we actually start, can I please ask you to agree to a change in the order of the items on the agenda? It would make sense to deal with the annual governance statement for 2019-20, which is currently item 10, before the internal audit plan and charter 2021, which is currently item 9, so that we deal with all the items relating to the 2019-20 financial year before considering items within the current financial year. I'll assume that you're in agreement with this unless you click on the raise hand icon. It just makes sense to deal with one year together and then the current year together, otherwise we'll get confused. So do we agree with that?
Agreed.
Agreed.
No,
Agreed.
Agreed.
no raised icon.
Agreed.
Okay, right, thank you. Thank you. Agenda item 6, that is the external auditor report certification of claims and returns annual report 2018 to 19. Naomi Lucas, Assistant Director, Resources, will introduce the report. Please, Naomi.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the purpose of this report is to draw your attention to the certification of claims and returns annual report for the financial year 2018-19. So in accordance with DWP requirements, the council must appoint an external auditor to perform checks on the accuracy of our housing benefit subsidy claim. And the external auditor appointed for the financial year 2018-19 was BDO. The report that is appended to item 6 summarises the results of that work that they've carried out. And in summary, BDO performed and certified our housing subsidy benefit claim, which had a total value of 15.6 million, and they identified some small errors totaling £235. Further to this, the Department of Work and Pensions has extrapolated those findings across the whole of the claim, and this has resulted in a further adjustment of £5,588 being clawed back from the council. However, members will see that that amount is not material when compared to the overall value of the claim, which, as I said, was £15.6 million. In relation to this work, BDO have posed a scale fee variation increase of £10,700 compared to their original fee level, which members will see is more than the original fee that was proposed. That is as a result of the additional testing work that they've had to carry out for this the 18-19 financial year, compared to the testing they were anticipating when the fee was set, which was a couple of years ago, and which was based on a lower level of testing, which was applicable at the time. So the recommendation of the report is just that it be noted. However, if members do have any specific questions, I'm happy to try and answer them. Thank you.
I do have a question. Do I wait till someone sees my hand up, or do I just come in?
Sorry, Councillor Hoy. I mean, I'm happy to answer that. Chair, are you happy for me to answer Councillor Hoy's question?
Councillor Butcher's
She's
been
frozen.
ejected from the meeting. Yeah, she's frozen currently.
While Councillor Butcher is apparently not able to communicate, yes, Councillor Hoy.
Sorry, would it be appropriate to suspend the meeting while Councillor Mrs. Butcher tries to re-engage?
I'm just contacting her. Sonia, Councillor Leslie Butcher's Zoom's just crashed. She's trying to get back in, but she's happy for Councillor Dave Merritt to carry on with the meeting. If Councillor Dave Merritt would want to do this.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Merrick. The question just really is around on page 6.19. One of the recommendations is discussing with a software provider to provide bespoke reports. And I understand that that's being discussed at the moment, according to the next paragraph. So I keep turning my head because I've got one computer with the things on there and looking at that one. I just wondered, because there seems, and also around the fee, there seems to be this perennial problem that additional audit work is required because the reports we're getting aren't quite good enough, and this seems to happen year on year. I understand these specific reports can be quite expensive to acquire from the software providers, because I think we've queried that before. I wanted to know how far down the line are we getting for this report? Is it just one report we need? And is the problem, because we talked about Excel, so I assume we're exporting reports to, or the data to, Excel at the moment. Is that the case? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. So the Capita Academy system that we use to process all the information for the housing benefit claims is a highly complex system, and we do routinely get upgrades and patches and different upgrades to the system routinely to make sure it is as up to date as possible. However, there is any number of sort of bespoke reports that can be designed and run as the council sees fit for its management information purposes. I believe that that this wasn't a weakness that was particularly identified before the audit. I think that it's just been picked up during the course of the audit that this report didn't appear to quite be working as expected. So obviously we're taking remedial action to try and ensure that that doesn't happen again. We're always working to make sure the system is as accurate and up to date as possible. However, I think there's always the chance that there's the odd anomaly that's picked up just because of the complexity of the information and the number of reports that can be run out of the system. So I think that's probably all I could say really on that point.
So have we yet approached them for this report that we are, according to the management response, we are doing? And have we got a cost for it yet?
I believe we have approached Capita about the report. I don't have a cost estimate to hand, but I can certainly find out what that cost is. But as I say, it's not unusual. We do often request or upgrade the system or run bespoke reports. So it's not unusual in that respect. But I can certainly try and find out if we've had a quote for that particular report.
Okay, can that be supplied to members of the committee, please, Chairman? Not the report. I don't think we want that, but the fact that we have got the information and requested the report.
I think the chairman is now back with us.
Oh yes, thank you.
Chairman?
Yes, Councillor Sperring.
Thank you, Chairman. It's only a small question. I assume this increase, the scale of additional monies being paid for the additional work required, comes across as some sort of statutory level, does it? Is there a sort of a set cost per hour, or is it just a random figure that the auditors request?
Thank you, Councillor Sperring. So in the case of the housing benefit audit, we've opted out of the kind of national framework agreement, and we have entered into joint procurement with Basildon to actually procure the audit services of BDO. So at that point, they submitted an estimate of the fee level over the course of that contract term. So we had an indicative fee at the start for each of those 3 years, I believe. So they based that estimate, as I say, on the sort of level of errors that were found in the I think it's believed the 15-16 audit, which for whatever reason was lower in that year. The nature of the housing benefit checking is that if an error is found, that then necessitates a sort of 100% sample check of the audit. So it requires a significant amount more work, and then that has to be re-performed to the following year. So any errors, you know, from one year to the next sort of get carried forward and then have to have additional checking. So in terms of how then they cost that additional work, we have had a detailed breakdown from BDO of how they've arrived at their that fee, and we have been through that with them in a detail. Essentially, they place an additional charge for each sort of set of testing that they have to re-perform. So the fee level that they've subsequently arrived at is based on the number of additional testing sets that they've had to do. So in that respect, we can't really sort of argue or negotiate the fee massively, because it is based on the error level that they've found, albeit, as I've said, the error level overall is not massively material in terms of the overall value of the claim.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Chair. Naomi, thank you for your comments on that. Could you just ask us what has been done to prevent, or what will you be doing to prevent any future problems that might occur in this, please?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carter. Yeah, that's a difficult one, and one we do obviously get asked every year. Obviously, where particular errors have been identified, we put in place an action plan as set out in the report of how we would try to address those in future and ensure those errors don't happen again. The reason I say it's a difficult one is purely because the volume of claims that we have to process every year is so high, and the value of those claims is so high that inevitably, you know, human error is never going to be 100% accurate. And I think every council is in that same situation where, you know, the volume of errors is low, but yeah, as I say, there's always probably going to just be a few. So obviously, if there was systemic issues that we're having the same errors year on year, or there was a particular officer that was, you know, routinely making errors, obviously we try and pick that up and address that. But I do think it's very difficult to say that we're ever going to get to 100% accuracy, and I don't believe that any other councils have managed to get to sort of 100% accuracy as much as we would obviously strive to do that.
Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Mason.
Thank you, Mrs Chairman. I think you're back, aren't you? Yeah, just a couple of quick questions, if I may. I note that the 5,588 is not considered material. Could the Section 151 officer, or whoever is appropriate, advise at what level you would consider the errors to be of a material nature and of concern?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Mrs Mason. So the housing subsidy audit is slightly different from the main audit, which we'll speak to later in the meeting, in that the auditors at the outset of the audit don't set a level of materiality as such, because as I say, they have to actually check, they have to report on any errors. So any error, no matter how small, will be reported and picked up. Whereas, yeah, in our main audit, there is a level of materiality below which the auditors wouldn't necessarily sort of feel obliged to report that. I suppose my assessment of what I mean by materiality is in the context, as I say, of 15.6 million. So I think most committee members would agree that it's 5,000 or 6,000 pounds, yeah, as a proportion of the overall claim value of 15.6 million. Is not material in that context. Thank you.
You haven't answered the question, Madam Chairman, if I can come back. The question was, at what level would you consider this material? I accept what you're saying about the £5,588 in the scheme of things is a relatively small amount. However, I'm just curious as to when concerns would be raised and when you would consider it material. It's a simple enough question.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mason. I have tried to answer the question as best I can. As I say, that we don't actually set a materiality threshold, so I can't give you a number above which I would consider it material. All I can consider is the actual error rate that's been identified, and I don't believe that in this case that I would classify that as material, but I haven't got a threshold as such above which I would sort of have a cut-off point, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If I may, I've got one more question, which hopefully will be able to be answered, if not tonight, at a later stage. Do you know if other councils use the same system, and are we all paying for the same reports? You know, is this a problem overall, or is it a problem specific to RDC? I think from what you've been saying, it's probably a general problem.
Thank you, Councillor Mr. Mason. So a number of authorities do use the Capita Academy system. We are not alone in that. Offhand, I know that Malden also use that system. There's a sort of 3 or 4 main revenues and benefits systems that are used across local authorities. So no system is perfect, and each authority will have tailored and, you know, bespoke to their system as they feel fit to a degree. Obviously, the core set of reports are probably quite standardised, but if there's a specific sort of issue with a particular report, it's likely that that would be affecting all councils that use that system equally. And generally, in that case, the system provider, Capita, would sort of provide a patch or update, which then gets applied to all local authority systems equally.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Councillor Carter.
I'm sorry, Chair. I've already asked a question. I don't know what's happened with my hand. It's it goes up and then it comes down, and then it goes up and then comes down again. So there isn't anything I need to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy.
Sorry, Chairman, I was going to ask a question, but it's just been asked. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So no further questions, no? So there's a recommendation, paragraph 7.1 on page 6.2. And that recommendation is that the certification of claims and returns annual report 2018 to 19 be noted. Is that noted, members?
Agreed.
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 All right, thank you. If anyone who doesn't agree, just put their hand up. Right, that's been noted. Okay, agenda item 7, the 2019-20 external audit plan and updates. And Naomi Lucas will introduce this report as well, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, as the report sets out, this is formally presenting the Council's annual audit plan and addendum as submitted by our external auditor, EY, to cover the audit of the 2019-20 financial statements, and also to provide an update on the status of the audit this year. We do have with us tonight Chloe Weaver, who's the audit manager for the audit. So I will bring her in a minute to give a progress update in terms of the audit work for this year. But I'd just like to remind members that the normal timescales that we'd be working to in a financial year have been delayed or deferred slightly in light of the COVID-19 situation. So ordinarily we would publish our draft accounts by the 31st of May, and we'd aim to have them audited by the end of July. However, legislation's been passed to allow us to defer the publication of the accounts until the 31st of August and get them audited by the 30th of November. We have published our draft accounts on the 25th of June, so we've met that statutory deadline in terms of the council's publication of the accounts. The audit work is still ongoing, although substantively complete, and we didn't actually delay the planned audit work that was scheduled in prior to COVID-19. So that work is primarily done, but Chloe will give an update on that in a minute. So appended to the report is the audit plan, as I said, which was submitted before the COVID-19 situation, and there's a second appendix which sets out the updates to the audit plan in light of COVID-19. So I have previously circulated those to members because I felt it was appropriate, obviously, that you had the opportunity to see those before the audit work commenced. So as the audit work, as I said, is now substantively done, I'm not proposing to go through the audit plan in any great detail unless any members have any specific questions. I'll assume they have been read and noted already. But again, I'm sure that Chloe would be willing to answer any questions that you might have on those. So the reports at paragraph 4 also sets out the proposed fee level for this audit for the 2019-20 financial year. This hasn't been formally agreed yet, but as the report sets out, EY are proposing a variation of £23,181 to the original proposed scale fee level in light of the additional work that they will have to carry out, which is detailed in that addendum. That isn't the actual final fee level at this stage because they haven't completed their work, and there may be additional work still required in respect of COVID-19 and potentially other factors, but that is their proposed scale fee increase. So yeah, the recommendation of the report is just that the plan and addendum be noted, but at this point I would hand over to Chloe to give an update on the status of the audit work so far, if that's okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Naomi. So as Naomi said, I'm pleased to say that we have substantially completed our audit of the financial statements for the year ended 31st of March 20 in accordance with our audit plan and audit plan addendum that you will have seen in the papers. As Naomi mentioned, we did commence our audit in June in line with our agreed timescales that we initially set out in our audit plan. So there were no delays in light of COVID-19 to the audit timing. And I'm very pleased to say that the audit has progressed smoothly and efficiently despite the challenging remote working environment that we've had to cope with and is not usual for the way we would normally conduct an audit. There are some key elements of work where we have been unable to conclude at this point in time, and these include the pensions assurance. So in line with other years, we place assurance on the work completed by the auditor of Essex Pension Fund, and they are still completing their audit of Essex Pension Fund at the moment, so we're unable to conclude the work in that area. We're also awaiting one investment confirmation from Lloyds Bank, who we write to directly for confirmation. And then we are also progressing work on going concern. In our audit plan addendum, we have highlighted going concern as an additional area of focus for us in light of COVID-19 and its impact on public sector funding. And that's an approach we're taking across all our local authority audits this year. At the moment, management have provided going concern disclosures within the financial statements, and they've also provided us with a supporting going concern assessment and evidence to allow us to complete that work. And we're currently reviewing this information but at this date in time, unable to conclude on that work. Through the course of our audit so far, we've identified only one audit adjustment totaling £130,000, and this is just a reclassification between income and expenditure as a result of accounting for a housing benefit recharge. And I just want to highlight that there's no impact on the net expenditure within the CIES as a result of that item. It is just a classification between income and expenditure. We have noticed some minor disclosure adjustments, but none that we would consider significant enough to warrant the attention of the Audit Committee at this point in time. We have also largely completed our VFM work in accordance with our audit plan, and our work has evidence that the Council has put in place proper arrangements to secure value for money, and we expect to issue an unqualified VFM conclusion. We are expecting to receive the assurance from the Essex Pension Fund auditor in September, which will allow us to conclude the work on the financial statements. So we therefore plan to present our audit results report at the next Audit Committee.
Thank you. Councillor Hoy, you have a question.
Thank you, Jim. Sorry, my computer's a bit slow today. Just generally, it's sort of, I've got loads of little notes written down on this one, but I suppose it really comes around the COVID, most of it, because obviously although COVID doesn't actually affect the accounts too much, because most of it's occurred afterwards, a lot of it will reflect on the continuing delivery of the asset programme, for instance, and around value for money and around the value of the properties potentially and things like this, which is mentioned in the appendix, which I keep losing because I keep darting to and fro. So it's really the questions are very detailed, but I think I'll try to summarise them so I don't take up forever with it. Is around how, although you've got some things here, clearly some work needs to be done on how you're going to test the value for money moving forward, and the going concern moving forward in particularly. There's also money coming into the council, which I believe is supposed to match the excess costs which have been incurred. I think Naomi will correct me, but it's about 970,000, give or take, that we've received, which is supposed to match. And I know that we do a report that Naomi sends us every month, I think it is, to central government about those figures. So it's really testing around, what testing are we developed around that? But that's really moving forward, although some of those costs would have been incurred in this period. And also, I just have concerns about the asset values and asset values moving forward, really, particularly, although you said value for money, you've done that. How do you do value for money when the asset programme the values may have been changed by COVID, and what may happen in the property market? Really, that's what the question is. I'm trying to summarise it rather than give loads of different little points. Does that help? Is that a question you can answer or not? Or two questions? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Hoy. So in terms of VFM, so we specifically look at the arrangements in year. So we would only be looking at the arrangements up to the 31st of March 20. Now, obviously, COVID did hit quite late in March. So the impact on our VFM conclusion from a 1920 perspective is actually quite small. So it's only really reflecting the sort of last week of March. So that's not to say we haven't done anything. We have looked at how the council immediately responded to COVID-19, but that's sort of the extent of our work from a VFM perspective. As you say, the bigger impact is rightly so going to be the following year, so 2021. So it's likely that our VFM risks will reflect COVID-19 for the 2021 financial year. And I guess the second part of your question was around asset values. So from the financial statements accounts audit, the asset values included within the balance sheet are subject to some uncertainty as a result of COVID-19. So the valuers that have valued the assets in the financial statements have at this point in time disclosed an uncertainty over those values as at the 31st of March. So we have done some additional work to get ourselves assurance that those values are materially correct, but we have requested that the council does disclose the material uncertainty that the valuer has included within their reports, and it is likely that our opinion will include an emphasis of matter paragraph that would divert the reader's attention to this disclosure, but we have got the assurance we require, so our opinion wouldn't be modified in respect of that matter.
And the final bit was about government support, the just under £1 million we've received.
Yeah, so I believe that the most of that money was received after the year end, so in early April, so it doesn't actually impact on our audit of the financial statements. I believe the amount that was received before year end was not material from our perspective, and as you say, the costs incurred in the 1920 year weren't what we consider to be material, but again, it could be that we will reflect that in our risks for the following year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So our risks are really for the following year, not for the year that we're looking at the moment. So is that no further questions? On paragraph 7.1 on page 7.2, there's one recommendation that the annual audit plan and addendum for 2019-20 be noted. Is that noted, members?
Noted.
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 Thank you. So the next item is item 8, internal audit annual report. Mike Porter, Chief Audit Executive, will introduce this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask members to refer to page 8.1 of this report? The purpose of the report itself is to provide Chief Audit Executive's annual opinion on the overall adequacy and effectiveness of the Council's framework of governance, risk management and internal control in operation during 2019-20. The opinion is largely derived from a programme of work undertaken by the Council's internal auditors, and that programme of work is basically formulated into an annual audit plan. The annual audit plan for 2019-20 was actually approved by this committee in May of 2019, and during 2019-20 the committee has received a number of progress updates on delivery of the audit plan and the results of individual audits carried out during the course of the year. Appendix 1 to this report summarises the work of internal audit completed during the course of the year. And since the committee last met in March 2020, a total of 5 further audit engagements have been completed, and 2 of those were rated as good and 3 adequate. In total, we've actually achieved 20 audit reviews during the course of the year. Only one of those audit reviews resulted in a limited assurance opinion. The other 19 audit reviews either received an adequate or good rating. In addition to this audit work, we also undertook a further 4 light touch audit reviews. So as I said, my opinion for the year is largely based on the work we undertook during the course of the year. So I'm satisfied that we undertook sufficient work during the course of the year to enable me to draw an opinion on the Council's arrangements for governance, risk management, internal control. That is not to say that we have looked at everything during the course of the year. Our audit plan is largely risk-based, but we do also look at the Council's key financial systems. We are not able to look at everything during the course of the year, so that's why our audit plan is largely risk-based. So we identify what are the major risks concerning the Council, and we will look at those during the course of the year. So based on the 20 audit reviews undertaken during the course of the year, I am providing an adequate assurance opinion on the Council's arrangements for risk management, internal control and governance in operation during the course of the year, and that these practices, generally called with proper practice, are fundamentally sound, although there are some opportunities to improve these arrangements. In addition, I would like members to, if I can ask members to turn to page 8.3 of this report. I'd like to briefly talk about the counter-fraud activity that is undertaken by the council. The council is actually responsible for investigating all non-benefit fraud, and much of this work is undertaken by the council's compliance officer that actually sits in reps and benefits. And as we can see from this report, some significant cashable savings have been achieved during the course of the year. £146,000 has been achieved as a direct result of identifying unbilled properties and withdrawal of council tax discounts or exemptions that no longer apply. Further, we have identified cashable savings in the region of £652,000 in relation to business properties that were previously not on the rating list. Further to these additional savings, we've identified overpayment of housing benefit to the value of £36,000. So as we can see from that report, we've achieved some significant cashable savings over the course of the year. Lastly, I'd like to talk about the effectiveness of internal audit. We are required to undertake an annual self-assessment of our performance during the course of the year, and this is done by a self-assessment checklist. There is nothing for me to comment on in relation to this checklist. We've performed our audits in relation to the public sector internal audit standards, and I have no concerns in relation to the work carried out during the course of the year. In addition to the annual assessment we undertake ourselves, we are required to have an external assessment every 5 years, and this was undertaken in January 2018, which found that the internal audit team largely conformed with the public sector internal audit standards. I'm quite happy to take any questions in relation to my report.
Any question? Oh, I've got a question from Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, thank you for the report. It's just a couple of questions, really. One is on page 8.15 around assets management. I've now lost 8.15. There are some outstanding issues there. It's marked, the assurance level is adequate, but the risk area is that there are audit recommendations arising from 2017-18 and 2018-19 audit work that have not yet been implemented. It just seems a long time not to have implemented them. Is there a reason why they haven't been implemented? That's the first question.
Thank you, Councillor White. Can I pass that over to Jim, please?
Thank you. The key ones, am I there? Am I there?
Yes, we can hear you.
Right. The key recommendations that are not done, they relate specifically to the, what do you call it, the asset register. It's proven to be a very complex piece of work, and it is progressing. And it has been reviewed to sort of link into the other reviews that are going on, and should be in place by the end of this financial year.
I just feel like ever since I've been a councillor, we've been reviewing the asset register.
Yes.
I suppose in some ways it is a long piece. You're forever doing it, I suppose, but it just seems we never seem to get there.
Yes, absolutely right, Councillor. The situation is we have different people using different bits of the register, and what we think we've got all their bits of assets we need. We just haven't got them in one place, and that's the bit we're trying to develop.
All right. Okay, yeah, thank you. The other one, and this is where my notes are letting me down. I've got page 8.8, which I'm aware is something, I find it, which has been reported to us before, so it's been through us. But I'm talking around emergency planning on page 8.8, which was reported to the Audit Committee on the 10th of March 2020. Mm-hmm. It was marked as good. And hindsight's a very good thing. I'd hope we might relook at that at some point, because I don't think our response was good. I think it would be below good. In some ways it can be subjective, but it's also something that I'm aware that the managing director has sent round some requests for members to say what went well, what went poorly, what worked, what didn't work as well. But I just feel that maybe the emergency planning, I don't think I know other members will disagree, but I don't think we responded as we should have responded, or were capable of responding if we had a good emergency plan. That's all. So it's something just to wonder how we looked at it to check that it was a good emergency plan, whether or not we'd ever actually tried to enact some of the things in the emergency plan. And it just makes me cautious about accepting other audit reports in the future. And maybe perhaps I or other members, maybe we should be questioning more when things are good, as well as when they are adequate or limited. I'm not sure it's a question you can answer, apart from the fact, will you be looking at that again? Is that going to come up again, emergency planning, in the internal audit?
Yes, Councillor, that we thought that this would be an ideal opportunity to look at it, putting it into practice. So we have included it in this year's audit plan. Right. With regards to what we did last time, it was very much a theoretic exercise based on what do we think we covered and the organisations we're working with. So from a sort of a planning viewpoint, it appeared to be well considered. Obviously, proof is in the pudding when situations happen.
Yeah, there is hindsight here. It's very easy with hindsight. Although the review, this is interesting because the review committee did also pick up about this, and I just wondered, this is one of those committees where, or one of those subjects where two committees look at it sometimes, and I just wonder if there could be more liaison between two committees sometimes over things like this, to save one, duplication of work, and two, try to feed off each other sometimes. That's just an observation for that one. The second one is 8.22 and 8.23, which is around ICT and security. There were just a couple of comments I wanted to pick up on the report, particularly on page 8.23. On page 8.23, on the second paragraph of the executive summary, towards the bottom, it says, it's the third line up from the bottom paragraph, members and staff now use 0365 system on updated council issued equipment. This is not necessarily the case. I'm aware that staff will use it on their own personal equipment. I use Office 365 on my own personal computer. I'm aware of other members doing the same. So I'm not sure how that affects the statement is wrong factually because it's used elsewhere. I'm not sure how that affects what the audit was trying to do. I'm not a technical expert on IT. It's just a question. The statement there is wrong as far as I'm concerned. If it's right as far as ICT and your audit of it, that's fine. I just need an explanation. And then further down, the second paragraph from the bottom, starting to the last word of the second line, it says liaison with the ICT team identified 85 to be deleted. These were users. So these are users who didn't need to be users on the ICT system, as I understand it. Can I just confirm? It says they've been identified to be deleted. Have they been deleted? I think is the question. Thank you. They're the two questions there.
Right. Okay. The first one, I'll have to look into that other one. The first question, because I was under the opinion that all staff and members had been issued with council basic IT kit, which they should be using to keep the integrity of the system. So that's something. That's
not what I've been told. I was told I could use it on my personal computer. I mean, what I'm doing now is on a council issued Toshiba.
We can certainly, we could use sorry. Yeah, we could. Yes, you can use Office 365 to access your emails and items such as Teams, but you shouldn't, but from an officer viewpoint, you shouldn't be able to get into any of the operating systems without going through the portal.
Okay, this is where we as members don't
have
the same access as officers, presumably.
Yeah, like when you talk about the academy system for revenue and benefits, only certain people can have those, and that can only be accessed through the portal, through the network that we have. And that, yes, possibly a confusion in terminology. Okay, and the second point, the users were mainly staff who had not been deleted, various external IT staff who had reason to access the system, who have been left on. I've been assured by the ICT team that the 85 people that are identified have been deleted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Councillor Butcher. Jim, just to let you know, Councillor Shaw and myself do not use council issued equipment, because we had it, it never worked when we gave it back, and we now use our own iPads. So just to let you know, the Councillor Shaws do not use council issued equipment, just on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
And I believe Councillor Williams doesn't use the one either.
Thank you. I'll take that up with the IT team just to clarify the positions.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Ayano.
Thank you for pronouncing it correctly, Leslie. Councillor Butcher. Jim, as a former portfolio holder for Enterprise, I can confirm that there are a number of councillors within the chamber who do not actually use the council supplied equipment, and there is a register which actually details exactly who is using the council equipment and who doesn't.
Chair, if I may just come in there, I do believe that it's council policy that for members that they can use their own devices if they so wish, but I think the point of issue is about which systems they can or can't access without the appropriate security, and I think that's the issue we'll take back and just check with the ICT team, but I don't believe there is an issue per se with members using their own devices. I believe that is council policy. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no further questions. So at paragraph 12 on page 8.5, there's one recommendation, that the Chief Audit Executive's opinion on the overall adequacy and effectiveness of the council systems of governance, risk management and internal control be noted. Is that noted, members?
Noted, Chairman.
Noted, Chairman.
Noted, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, we're going now to item 10 because of our readjustment. And item 10 is the annual governance statement for 2019-20. And Jim Cavani, Principal Auditor, will introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is to introduce the annual governance statement, which is a statement which will form part of the financial accounts to say how well we believe that we have been governing ourselves throughout the year. This pulls together audit work, external reports, self-assessments by heads of service or assistant directors. If I could just put members to the structure of the report. Section 1 on 10.7 is an introduction to what the corporate governance is about. Section 2 on page 10.9 is the preparation of the AGS, which is the basis for doing it. Statutory officers' reports, the Chief Audit Executive report, and an overview of COVID, of how we dealt with it. Section 3 on page 10.13 is the compliance of the local code of corporate governance, which the council has adopted since 2017. Section 4 on page 10.28 is how we address issues that we identified going forward into 2019-20. And section 5 on page 10.30 are matters that we've addressed from this year's review that need to be looked at going forward. I think that's the introduction.
Are there any questions? No questions.
Sorry, Chairman, I'll get my hand up. It's not a question as such. It is a question. I suppose this is one of those reports where I always have great difficulty with it because I often quite disagree with some of the things that are in there. But that might well be because I'm coming from a minority group perspective rather than the administration, and I accept that it's an administration's report. Firstly, however, I just felt that the peer review is mentioned in here, and I'll be fair, it is mentioned in paragraph 10.34, I think, on page 10.34. However, I think although it's mentioned, it's glossed over more than the report itself should be, I think, because it said there were fundamental issues around review committee, fundamental issues around the MTFS. And I know the MTFS is mentioned on page 10.26, and it does mention about the peer review, but not the fact that it should be forecasting further forward. It's been mentioned an established MTFS and budget setting processes in place, principle C. However, the peer review brought up the fact that the MTFS should be more detailed and better looking forward than we have. So just to say we've got an established one is really underplaying what the peer review said, in my opinion. We put lots of figures in on page 10.18 about social media and our apparent reach on social media. But again, we don't really, we're talking here, just there, corporate Twitter has 5,000 followers. Corporate Facebook has 3,000 likes, and Instagram 500 followers. But we're not that's all we're saying. We're just talking about people who follow. We're not saying about the reach of those. And I think the problem is we're not measuring the reach to put in there. And I think the report would be much better if we went a bit deeper down and said that we are reaching more clickbacks from these are. We managed to help 5 people from these. We're just giving basic figures. And I mean, I'll leave it there. This is the problem. I could go on and on and on about it, where it underplays things and just gives these out. I think I'm not trying to be critical with it. I'm trying to say that I think we could be much better with it if we actually gave a bit more detail than in here. But I know it shouldn't be too detailed, but trying to say, not necessarily say that everything's great, but maybe say, look, the peer review did identify this and we've got an established MTFS, but based after the peer review, we're going to work on it and make it better. This is the sort of thing I think we should be putting in here rather than saying everything is great now or everything's established and it's fine. I know it's not necessarily what we're all saying, but this is my problem with the statement as it stands. And probably every year I have the same issue. You're probably bored of me saying it now, and I'll leave it there. I don't think you'll be changing anything from it, but it's just, if moving forward, perhaps we could have just be a bit more informative, I think, is what I'll be trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
No, I'm sorry, I haven't got my hand up, sorry.
Okay. Councillor Mason.
I know it's picky, but I do prefer Councillor Mrs. Mason. I must endorse what Councillor Mr. Hoy has said. We get these reports, we gloss over them, and we're not really proactive with putting things right. It seems to be a little pat on the head. Oh, we've done okay, could do better. Well, perhaps we should be a little bit more proactive. I'll just say that the peer review was some considerable time ago with no real activity to rectify the faults in there appears to have been taken, and I'm sure the same will happen with other issues. But sometimes these issues, although they appear criticisms, they're not criticisms, or they should be taken as a constructive, or if you like, a critical friend. And when you have that information, it's to help you. And I think we need to take it on board, the information that's given to us, and utilise it rather than file it under done. Thank you.
Thank you. Got any answers to that, Jim Keaveney?
I totally understand the nature of the constructive criticism. I'll try to bear that in, try and bear that in mind a bit going forward next year.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, Chair, as well, just add something there, please.
Sorry?
Apologies, Chair. I was just going to add a comment, if that's okay.
Yes, go on.
I was just going to say, in respect of the peer review, that that work hasn't been sort of shoved under the carpet, so to speak. I mean, it is slightly unfortunate in terms of the timing that it reported at the back end of last year, and we did subsequently develop an action plan, which is referred to in the annual governance statement. I think, to be fair, that it is noted in the annual governance statement as an outstanding action, but I believe that COVID has obviously had an impact, not just in terms of our ability to progress some of those actions. So inevitably, we've had to focus on core work over the past few months, and perhaps not had as much capacity to deal with some of the actions arising out of that action plan. But also, I believe that we will have to revisit some of the actions and outcomes of that plan in light of things that have changed as a result of COVID as well. So that work is still being progressed. And as one of the councillors alluded to, there is an action from Review Committee as well to report back on the actions of the peer review action plan. And obviously that will be one of the sources of assurance that both internal and I'm sure external audit will look to in order to form their opinions on our overall governance as well. So I just want to give some assurance to members that that work is still ongoing, but inevitably there has been a little bit of a pause over the past few months in respect of that work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got a further question from Councillor Hoy.
I think Councillor Mrs Mason was before me, Chairman.
All right, Councillor Mrs Mason.
Yeah, I'd just like to come back on that. I appreciate the officer's defence of her situation, but we have had in the past few months with the situation that's affected all of us quite severely, I would say, regular group meetings. The managing director has assured us that work has been able to carry on as normal. It seems that we're getting a contradiction here. If work has been able to carry on as normal, then...
Councillor Mrs Mason, can I just interrupt you a minute? I think you've got your television on.
Yes, I have.
Could you turn it down? Could you turn it down, please?
I'll turn it down, but I'll shut the door.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's interfering with the sound.
So I've learned to blank it out. Sorry. I am just concerned that things seem to take an inordinate amount of time, and I'm just going to leave it there. I prefer to Councillor Hoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy.
Yes, I'm not going to talk about the peer review in the same way as Councillor Mrs Mason. All it was, yes, I understand it's in the report and it is mentioned in the report, which is good. And I'm not trying to complain about that. I'm just saying I think it should be more embedded around each of the items as well, such as the MTFS. When we mention the MTFS, perhaps we should be thinking about what the peer review said and mentioning that in the same place as well. So it's much more understandable and readable by everybody. They can see that the MTFS when they read about the MTFS, they can see there's something about it in the peer review and how to improve it even more. That's all. It's just something looking forward, I think.
If I may just come back again on that, Chair. Yeah, I accept that constructive sort of criticism, Councillor Way. Thank you. As I say, I think part of the issue is that we haven't actually had the opportunity to actually look at and address in detail the recommendations of the peer review. So that piece of work still more work does need to be done on that, and I'm anticipating that further detail will be included in next year's report. So as I said earlier, it's not that work isn't intended to be done, but it hasn't been fully completed. And just to come back to Councillor Mrs Mason's point, I don't believe that we've been inconsistent in terms of what work we have or haven't been able to do. We've inevitably had to focus on our core processes more during this time, and we've kept the core business of the council operating over this difficult period. However, almost by definition, the actions of the peer review relate to new work and new projects and new activity that has to be taken forward. And I suppose that's the sort of work that has been slightly put on pause during this period while we focused on keeping the core operations of the council running. So thank you.
Thank you. There's no further questions. So at paragraph 8.1 on pages 10.2 and 10.3, there are two recommendations. Number one, that the annual governance statement for 2019-20 be endorsed and referred to the Managing Director and Leader of the Council for signature. Number two, that authority is delegated to the Chairman of the Audit Committee to endorse the changes to the annual governance statement following review by the Council's external auditors. Can we vote on both recommendations together, members? I will assume you are in agreement to vote on both unless you click on the raise your hand down icon.
Sorry, Chairman, I will be voting differently on them.
So you want them separately?
Unless I can just say, I don't mind just saying how I'm voting on 1 and 2 as we do. I don't mind. But if you've got to go through the protocol, I'm sorry, I will vote differently. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Councillor High. In that case, we'll vote on the first recommendation, that the annual governance statement for 2019 be endorsed and referred to the Managing Director and Leader of the Council for signature. Voting's done by a roll call of names. When Sonia calls out your name, please indicate if you wish to have a recorded vote and then whether you are voting for or against the recommendation or if you wish to abstain. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Councillor Mrs Butcher.
I don't need a recorded vote and I'm voting for the recommendation.
Councillor Mrs Carter.
Thank you, Chair. I'm abstaining.
Councillor Mrs Gooding.
I will be voting for the motion and I don't need a recorded vote. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Boy.
I'm abstaining. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Ioannou.
No recorded vote, and I'll be am for.
Councillor Lucas Gill.
No to a recorded vote and voting for.
Councillor Merrick.
No and for.
Councillor Milne.
No recorded vote and I'm voting for.
Councillor Mrs Shaw.
No recorded vote and I'm voting for.
Councillor Sperring.
No recorded vote and voting for.
Right, the result of that is 8-4 and 2 abstentions. So that is agreed. Right. Number 2 is that authority is delegated to the chairman of the Audit Committee to endorse the changes to the annual governance statement following review by the council external auditors. And we'll go through the voting the same way.
Councillor Mrs Butcher.
No recorded vote and 4.
Councillor Mrs Carter.
Thank you, Chair. I'm for.
Councillor Mrs Gooding.
No recorded vote and 4. Thank you, Chairperson.
Councillor Hoy.
No recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Ioannou.
No recorded vote and for the motion, Chairman.
Councillor Lucas Gill.
No recorded vote and 4.
What are you doing?
Councillor Merrick.
No and 4.
Councillor Milne.
No recorded vote and for the motion.
Councillor Mrs Shaw.
No recorded vote and 4.
And Councillor Sperring.
No recorded vote and 4.
Yes, thank you, members. That vote was unanimous. So that has been carried. Agenda item 9. Internal audit plan and charter for 2020-21. And the Chief Audit Executive, Mike Porter, will introduce this report.
Thank you. The report was sent to my annual my audit plan for 2021 and internal audit charter. The charter itself is essentially a formal document that defines internal audit's purpose, authority, responsibility, and position within the organisation. It also sets out the nature of our services, how internal audit will support the organisation in achieving its objectives. The audit plan itself builds upon the previous year's internal audit work and is also based on the corporate risks facing the council. It also links to the business plan for 2020-23. In addition to looking at the major risks facing the council, we also undertake audits in relation to the key financial systems. These key financial systems are important to the organisation in terms of the controlled environment they provide, and it's something that external audit look to rely on. It is likely that the plan will actually need revision during the course of the year as the risk environment in relation to COVID evolves, and we continually assess what support we can give to the organisation. I think it's fair to say we won't look to or deliver a normal audit plan for 2021 as COVID-19 risks unfold. We will continue to keep the audit plan under review during the course of the year, and any changes to the audit plan itself will be reported to committee. The plan itself is set out at 9.5 and lists all the audits we will undertake during the course of the year. And as I said earlier in my previous agenda item, this work is used to actually formulate my annual audit opinion at year end. In relation to the audit plan, the public sector internal audit standards state that it is not for members to direct the audit plan, but they need to be satisfied that the work will enable them to draw sufficient assurances from the work we undertake, and that the plan itself relates to the key risks of the council. So members actually need to be happy that the audit plan will give them sufficient assurances in relation to the council's arrangements for internal control, risk management and governance. I'm quite happy to take any questions in relation to the item.
All right, thank you. Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. The first question will be on page 9.3 around resources. I'm aware at the last audit committee that we had, I believe, taken on or in the process of taking on another audit person. Can it be confirmed that that was the case and that they are still with us and that we are in normal circumstances we'd be able to complete the audit program? I understand it isn't normal and you've already referred to that. That was the first question.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we did undertake and put in post another member of staff, and her name is Becky, and she's been in post for a little over a year. What's happened since then is that she's now on maternity leave, or started maternity leave in June. And so the audit plan's based on the resources of one individual, but the plan itself is also supported by Basildon Council. So the plan is basically put together based on known resources. So we knew Becky was going to be leaving us in June to basically go on maternity leave. But we also realised that the plan is also supported by auditors from my own council, Basildon Council. So the plan is based around known risks, and we look at the risk involved and then apply how much resource we need to actually undertake those pieces of work. And where necessary, the plan, as I say, will be supported by Basildon Council in terms of resources provided by myself.
Okay, thank you. That's cleared that one up. I was a bit concerned it was just because we couldn't cope still, but it's planned. That's fine. The next question is, it's a difficult question. Page 9.6, you're looking at emergency planning and business continuity. I've already brought up one of these. I'm sure, so that's been looked at again. I think I probably had the answers on that one. The concern is, and it's been sort of answered, but the concern is around, you said emergency planning was good before, and in my opinion, it wasn't. So going by what you said, that we need to have confidence in what you're doing will be adequate. I just wonder what you'll be doing differently to make me have more faith in the process on that one.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I suppose when we previously looked at it, I suppose it's more around theory because we hadn't put it into practice. But now, given we have COVID-19, we've had the chance to actually test our arrangements. So we will look at actually what we did and what we could do better. So I think it's like, it'll be more of a lessons learned approach. So we'll look at what we did and whether we feel that was appropriate or not. So I think it will be very much a lessons learned approach. Actually, what did we do well? What could we do better? And then building that back into the process in terms of improving our arrangement. So I think we'll have the opportunity to now test our arrangements, and we can now comment on actually how they worked out in practice rather than just a theory approach. Because in the past, I mean, you can test them to the degree, but there's no substitute for actual arrangements.
Yeah, well, I understand the staff have fed back as well on what went well, what didn't go well, and members have as well. Is that something that is made available to you as well to look at?
Yeah, we will, in relation to the audit, we will approach all parties concerned and ask individuals how they felt it went, and we can seek reviews or comments from everyone across the board in terms of how they felt it went.
Yeah, is this being done as an early thing to do or a late thing to do? I'm just saying this because obviously this is still with us, and we may have to act on your findings sooner rather than later. Is what I'm thinking. If we have to, if there are more problems, maybe on a local level, there might be a lockdown on a local level, for instance, and people may not return to our offices in relation to the business continuity as we would hope. So I'm wondering how quickly you're looking into doing this work.
I think this is a piece of work we will do in the next 2 to 3 months. It's a key piece of work to understand actually what we could do, because I think, as you rightfully say, COVID-19 is now going to be with us for some time. So I think we need to look at actually what we did, what went well, what didn't go well, and then put some of those lessons learned into practice. Because I think we'll probably again need to revisit it later in the year as the whole risk environment unfolds. So I think it is a crucial bit of work that needs to be done early on, and we will sort of prioritise that piece of work to make sure that it is delivered over the next 2 to 3 months.
Okay, thank you. The final question, you'll be glad to know, is also on page 9.6. This is around cyber security and investigations of critical information breaches. Does your audit work involve looking at whether or not we're insured for it or could be insured for it to reduce our financial exposure?
I think that's a very good point. I think it's something we need to consider, yes. So we can include that in terms of the scope of audit to understand how we mitigate the risks and what are our insurance arrangements in relation to cyber security, yes.
All right, thank you. That was the last question.
Thank you. Right, there are no further questions. So at paragraph 8.1 on page 9.3, there's one recommendation that the proposed audit plan and charter for 2021 be approved, and voting will be the same way as before. So if you want to against the recommendation, or if you wish to abstain, and if you want a recorded vote. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Butcher.
No recorded vote and 4.
Councillor Mrs Carter.
Thank you. No recorded vote and 4.
Councillor Mrs Gooding.
No recorded vote and 4. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hoy.
No recorded vote and 4, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Ioannou.
No recorded vote and 4.
Councillor Lucas Gill.
No recorded vote and 4.
Councillor Merrick.
No and 4.
Councillor Milne.
No recorded vote and 4.
Councillor Mrs Shaw.
No recorded vote and 4.
Councillor Sperring.
No and 4.
Right, thank you, members. That looks as if that is an unanimous again, so the motion has been carried. Now we go on to agenda item 11, Audit Progress Report 2021. Mike Porter again will introduce this report.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
This is my first progress report for 2021 and lists the work we've undertaken in the first quarter of the year. It's fair to comment that usually the first quarter of the year, quite a bit of the work revolves around tidying up the work from the previous year and making sure all the final audit reports that are issued in relation to the previous year and making sure all the recommendations are captured from our audit report. So a fair amount of work in the early months of the new year are around finishing off the work from the previous year, tidying up all the final reports. That's not to say we haven't undertaken any work, and before Becky went off on maternity leave, we have undertaken a number of audits, and these are identified at 11.5 to this report. So we've actually achieved 4 audit reviews in the first 3 months of the year, and these relate to parameter input, billing and user permissions in relation to Academy, safeguarding, user permissions in relation to dimensions, and we also did a light touch audit in relation to procurement. We undertook a review of procurement in the previous financial year, and there were some identified control issues. So we did a light touch review looking at low level expenditure. And what we found is that in relation to low level expenditure, where quotes are required for items at this level, quotes weren't always obtained. So we want to look at basically all the contract procedure rules in relation to procurement and looking at the when we require quotes in relation to this level of expenditure. In relation to other work we're undertaking in the first 3 months of the year, Jim's been really busy in doing initial testing in relation to the housing benefit subsidy. This work supports the work of external audit. So Jim's been really busy in undertaking this work, as I say, and it's a major piece of work that external audit rely on. I'm quite happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? I don't have anybody down for a question. So at paragraph 7.1 on page 11.2, there are 3 recommendations. 1, that the update on delivering the 2021 plan be noted. 2, that the conclusions and results from completed audit engagements in appendices 2 and 3 be noted. And 3, that the updated status of audit recommendations in appendix 4 be noted. Is that noted, members?
Noted, Chair.
Noted, Chair.
Noted, Chair.
Noted, Chair.
Right, thank you. Agenda item 12, review of the Council's risk management framework and corporate risk register. Naomi Lucas will introduce this, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as the Chair said, this report is to present the updated corporate risk register for the Council for consideration and approval. The whole corporate risk register is included at Appendix A and sets out all the key risks that the Council faces, together with control measures in place to mitigate those risks, and an assessment of whether we feel the risk remains high, medium or low risk in terms of the likelihood and the impact of those risks. Generally speaking, we only review half of the risks every 6 months, and then the other half the second 6 months of the year. In light of all the changes and risks that the Council is facing at the moment, we felt it was appropriate to do a refresh of the entire risk register for this committee. So all of the risks have been reviewed by the risk owners for this committee meeting. So at page 12.2, paragraph 4.4, there's a summary of all the changes or amendments that have been made to the risks. So they're all set out for your consideration there. And further at paragraph 5.1 on page 12.3, we just note that while obviously COVID and also our exit from the EU are significant issues that the Council is facing, because they are actually sort of known issues that the Council is in the process of dealing with and addressing. They're not risks as such, they are being dealt with. So in terms of those factors, they are addressed where there's particular risks in relation to specific areas of the risk register. So for example, on the finance MTFS risk, we've updated that in light of the COVID risks we've faced, so that they have been updated and addressed, but they're not presented as sort of specific risks in their own right. But they have, as I say, all risks have been reviewed in light of the current situation. So I think the report is relatively self-explanatory. And the recommendation is just to note the report, but as ever, I'm happy to try and answer any specific questions that members might have. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Hoy, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. There's 2 questions really. The first one is a general one about page 12, it's basically 12. No, it's not 12.23. It's sort of 12.22 and 12.23. The corporate risk map. When were these last reviewed? I've got a feeling in my head that I've seen them being reviewed. I just feel that they're due a review. I think we can look at financial, for instance, on page 12.23. That's the top there. A critical A3 is 200,000 to 1 million. Catastrophic is 1 million to 10 million. When 10 million would, well, 1 million would be catastrophic. Maybe I just feel that the size of these the financial ones, and some of the other subjective points made could do with a good review at the moment. I feel that particularly the financial parameters for what's critical and what's catastrophic and what's marginal, I think they could do with a review. I don't know if these are standard ones, but I think for a council our size, they're not necessarily appropriate in my view. And also that's the same if you go further down, where we might have the legal ones, for instance. That are these the appropriate measures we should be taking? Are these written in the right way? They are subjective, I understand that, and it's easy dealing with figures rather than something which is a bit subjective. But I wondered when these last been reviewed, what they're based on and whether they're due a review. Thank you. That's the first question.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. So in answer to your question, there was a complete review of the risk framework, I believe just about a year ago now, and leadership team did a full review of the framework in conjunction with some external advice from one of our insurers, Zurich. And I believe that subsequently that report was presented to Audit Committee for their approval and sign off. So I believe that was about a year ago. We will review it regularly, so we can always go back, as you say, and I think some of the measures, as you say, are fairly subjective in their nature, so there's probably not a right or wrong answer as such, but it was reviewed and signed off by Audit Committee relatively recently. We can check back on the exact committee date.
Thank you.
Muted. Sorry, I was still muted there. Thank you for that. We've got the other points. We now seem to have residual risk. We now seem to have 3 at high. I think one of them, which is 3B, has generally been fairly high anyway, which is, I think is around the food, isn't it? That's the health and safety incident. No, the food one's 3A. So this is health and safety, which we regard as high. And also then we've got item 9, which is sustainability, well, failure to ensure financial sustainability for the council, which we talk about a lot. And also 10, inability to recruit, retain, develop and manage staff. Hi. What are we doing to mitigate these risks down from high?
Okay. Well,
beyond the principal control. I mean, I've seen the principal controls and actions before, and I think number 10 particularly, we always seem to have this problem. There's a lot of controls and actions we're doing, but I think we've been doing those for quite a long time, for instance, and they don't seem to be making a lot of difference at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hoy. Just to go to the staffing one first, I mean, this is something we have had further discussions with our HR lead and with the managing director. I think the status of the residual risk still remaining high just is it reflective of the inherent risk of us as a small council. As you're aware, we have a relatively, a small complement of staff. We're a small council and we have to compete in a competitive job market. And then the reality is that if 1 or 2 key members of staff leave for whatever reason, that does place us in a slightly vulnerable position in terms of having sort of backup in terms of other officers to fill that. So I think it's difficult to know what we can do to sort of manage that risk to bring it down to medium, but it is something that has been actively considered. Obviously we've got recruitment and retention policies in place. We've got our people plan in place, so we do everything we can to recruit and retain good officers, but as I say, it's an inherent risk that as a small council we're always a bit vulnerable in terms of if people were to leave for whatever reason. In terms of the MTFS risk, I mean, that is one I have sort of deliberately reclassified for this time, particularly in light of some of the risks we are facing as a council financially, particularly in light of some of the COVID risks that you've alluded to earlier. So again, I think it's in relation to the inherent instability of local government finance generally, and as much as a council we can respond and react and try and put in place control measures to react to that. The reality is that there's bigger external influences outside of our control, not least the local government funding settlement from central government. The fair funding review that has been postponed for a number of years now means that, you know, our financial system, system is quite inherently sort of unstable, and it's difficult, as I said, with the staffing one, to put in place controls that will bring that down significantly. So I mean, I accept what you're saying, but I think it's a combination of local factors and things that are within our control, and that interplay with the external environment and things that are outside of our direct influence.
So do we expect those three, or those, I suppose 9 and 10 in particular, to stay with a residual risk that high at the moment under this system? We don't expect to be able to manage those down at all, particularly.
Well, thank you, Councillor. I mean, the staffing one has been high and remains high. As I say, I would expect that probably to remain high, because there's not a huge amount we can do to control that risk, other than, as I said, to try and, you know, keep retaining, recruit good officers. The financial one, as I've said, that's only just been put up to high, and I would keep a watching brief on that. Obviously, if we get some firm answers both from central government and the COVID situation sort of plays out in relatively short order, it maybe we can revisit that and reassess whether that should be high going forward. But for the moment, I would judge that is obviously one of the major risks facing the council. So I believe that high is the right rating for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Chair. Naomi, could you answer, please? Who actually sets the risks, please?
Thank you, Councillor Carter. So, I mean, the risk register is owned by the leadership team. We have a risk and performance officer who supports in that process, but essentially it's jointly owned by the leadership team, but each risk is assigned an individual owner who is responsible for updating and refreshing that. But yeah, obviously, if an individual AD felt it was appropriate to add a new risk, we are always open to revisiting the risk register.
Thank you. So we have no further questions. Nobody else wants to speak. So there's one recommendation at paragraph 11.1 on page 12.4. And that is that the content of the corporate risk register for 2020-2021 be approved. Voting will be at the same way as before. When Sonia calls out your name, indicate if you wish to have a recorded vote and whether you're voting for or against.
Councillor Mrs. Butcher.
No recorded vote and for. Thank you, Sonia.
Councillor Mrs. Carter.
Thank you. No recorded vote and for.
Councillor Mrs. Gooding.
No recorded vote and for. Thank you, Chairperson.
Councillor Corey.
No recorded vote and for. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Ioano.
No recorded vote and for.
Councillor Lucas Gill.
No recorded vote and for.
Councillor Merrick.
No and for.
Councillor Milne.
No recorded vote and for.
Councillor Mrs. Shaw.
No recorded vote and for.
Councillor Sperring.
No recorded vote and for.
Right, I think once again that is unanimous. So that motion has been carried. So that concludes the meeting tonight. Thank you so much for everybody for attending and all your questions. It's been it was a long meeting. We had a lot on tonight, but we got through this quite well. So thank you very much. So the meeting now is closed at 21:09.
Good night now.
Good night, Chairman. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Night.